Have you ever thought, what if you could send money over the internet just like handing someone cash? Direct, instant, with no middleman? Well, back in 2008, a mysterious person or maybe a group called Satoshi Nakamoto dropped this little 9-page paper that laid out the exact blueprint for how to do it. So today we're going to get right into that revolutionary document, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So to really get why this paper was such a game changer, you have to transport yourself back to the internet of 2008. It feels like a lifetime ago, right? Back then, every single payment you made online, whether you were buying a book or sending $5 to a friend, absolutely had to go through a company. A bank, PayPal, a credit card company. And this, as it turns out, was a huge problem.
The paper gets right to the point. The whole system was built on a single, fragile idea: trust. You had to trust your bank to get things right, to handle disputes, to keep your money safe. But as Satoshi pointed out, this trust doesn't come for free. It has costs.
And this comparison really says it all. When you hand someone a $20 bill, that's it. The deal is done, it's instant, it's final. But online, it was a totally different story. Every payment could be reversed. And this constant possibility of chargebacks and disputes created what Satoshi called the inherent weaknesses of the trust-based model.
And this weakness had real-world consequences. Those middlemen charged fees to cover their costs, which meant tiny transactions like, say, tipping a writer a quarter for a great article, were pretty much impossible. Sellers had to ask you for all sorts of personal info to protect themselves. And even with all that, everybody just kind of accepted that a certain amount of fraud was going to happen. So, looking at all these issues, what was Satoshi's big idea? Was it to build a better, more efficient bank? Nope. The idea was way more radical than that. It was to just get rid of the bank, the middleman, entirely. And boom, there it is. That's the mission statement. The whole idea was to replace this kind of fuzzy human concept of trust with the cold, hard certainty of math. Instead of trusting a company, you could just trust cryptographic proof, something that anyone, anywhere, could check for themselves to verify it's true.
Okay, so what even is a coin in this new system? Well, it's not some file on your computer that you can copy and paste. Not at all. A coin is just the record of its own history. It's a chain of digital signatures. Think of it like a baton in a relay race, where each owner digitally signs it over to the next person.
And this brings us to the massive billion-dollar question, the one that computer scientists had been banging their heads against for decades, the double spending problem. I mean, with a physical coin, it's easy, right? You can't give the same coin to two people at once. But with digital stuff, what stops me from sending the same coin to you and then turning around and sending that exact same coin to somebody else?
Satoshi's solution was just brilliant. It was to make every single transaction public. That's it. If everyone has a shared public list, a ledger, of every transaction that's ever happened, in order, then trying to spend the same coin twice would be spotted by the entire network instantly. And that public ledger? Well, today we call it the blockchain.
Now, the paper itself calls this a peer-to-peer timestamp server. That sounds technical, but you can just think of it as a decentralized public notary. The entire network of users works together to stamp batches of transactions with the time, creating these blocks that are like official pages in the public record book, proving what happened and when.
And this is how the whole thing becomes so incredibly secure. You bundle transactions into a block, and the network creates a unique digital fingerprint for it. That's a hash. But here's the magic trick. That fingerprint gets included in the very next block. This creates the chain. So if anyone tried to change even one tiny detail in an old block, the fingerprint would change, the chain would break, and alarm bells would go off across the entire network.
Okay, but wait a second. If there's no one in charge, no boss, how in the world does the network decide who gets to add the next official block to this chain? If anybody could just add blocks whenever they wanted, you'd have complete chaos, right?
The answer to that question is, well, it's probably the most ingenious part of the entire system. It's not about who you are or what permissions you have. It's all about proof. The solution is called proof of work. Now, the easiest way to think about it is like a massive, continuous, competitive lottery. All the computers on the network are racing to solve a really hard math puzzle. The first one to find the answer wins the lottery, and with it, the right to add the next block to the chain. The work is the huge amount of electricity and computing power it takes to play.
What this creates is a totally new kind of democracy.
In a typical online system, someone could just create thousands of fake accounts or IP addresses to rig a vote. You can't do that here. Here, your vote is your computing power. It's one CPU, one vote. And because that costs real-world money for hardware and electricity, it's incredibly hard to fake. The majority is just the chain of blocks that has the most real work put into it.
And let me tell you, this security model is ridiculously effective. For an attacker to change a past transaction, they would have to solve the puzzle for that block and for every single block that came after it, all while working faster than the entire rest of the network combined. The odds of them pulling that off shrink to basically zero with every new block that gets added.
Okay, so we have all the pieces on the table now. Let's put them together and see what this thing looks like when it's up and running.
It's really just a simple, elegant loop. New payments are announced to everyone, all the nodes gather them up and start racing to solve the puzzle for the next block. When someone wins, they show their solution to the network. Everyone else checks their work, and if it's all legit, they add that new block to their chain and immediately start the race all over again for the next one. It's how thousands of computers all stay in sync with no one telling them what to do.
But why would anyone bother doing all this work? Well, this is the other brilliant piece: incentives. The winner of that race doesn't just get bragging rights, they get paid. They get to include a special transaction in the block that creates brand new coins out of thin air and pays them to the winner. This reward is what motivates people to secure the network, and it's also how new money gets created. As Satoshi perfectly put it, it's just like gold miners expending resources to add gold to circulation.
And that's basically the whole system, the one laid out in that original 2008 paper. And it's pretty wild to think that since it went live in 2009, this little 9-page idea has kicked off a global multi-trillion-dollar industry and inspired a whole generation of new technologies.
So, to sum it all up, what did Satoshi really give us? A system for sending money that doesn't need a trusted third party. It's a peer-to-peer network that creates a public history that anyone can see, but no one can change. And it's a network where your voting power comes from your actual computing power. It is, in Satoshi's own perfect words, robust in its unstructured simplicity.
Ultimately, this paper leaves us with a huge, world-changing idea, a way to replace our trust in institutions with our trust in pure mathematics. And what the real long-term implications of that idea are for our money, our society, and our future, well, that's the big question that we're all still trying to figure out today.
And that's our look at this absolutely foundational paper. Thanks so much for diving in with me. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you for the next one.